are downtown. So
Here
that's what
we
they see
go.
first.
Okay, we're live here, Ben.
All right.
Yeah. Hey, so everybody, welcome. Let me see if I can get it up on my page and let people drop in. I don't see it yet. I'd like to make sure we're live first.
Yeah,
Here,
exactly.
there we are. Yeah. And we'll let people drop in as they come in. But what I wanted to talk about today was really the fastest and easiest way to become great at sales. And too many people take the wrong approach. I think too many people look at it as really a mindset problem where it's all about knowledge. So you got into sales. What did you do? Did you read books? Did you take a course? Did you just do what you're told? I'm asking you, Ben.
For for
Yeah.
me, yeah. Oh no. I mean, I was kind of just dropped into the into the fire at Yelp was where I first started. And I definitely, talk to people, talk to older family members. My dad's, works in sales. He sells HVAC back in New England, and um, had a lot of different advice from different people, but I really, nothing could have prepared me for cold calling at Yelp. And so really for me, the real learning experience was the experience of getting on the phones
Yeah.
when I was there.
And, I talk to salespeople all the time, and they always are looking for the gimmick, the knowledge, but
Hmm.
then they try and apply the knowledge and it doesn't work all the time. So what do? They blame the knowledge.
Hmm.
So they look for the next knowledge instead
Totally.
of, yeah, you think about sales, and this will resonate with you, um, much more like comedy, where it's a performance. Because I'm sure you write a script and then you play it out and you're like, and then you have to vary it quite a bit.
Totally. Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
there's so many times where we have a script for comedy where we have a script, we think it's funny, and then we go and film it, and we've gotten better at reading this ahead of time, but you go and film it and you're like, man, this wasn't funny at all. It was really funny on paper,
Yeah.
but you apply it to real life and it just doesn't translate. And I think in sales, it's like the famous Mike Tyson quote, everyone can have a plan until you get punched in the mouth. Um, and so I think the real knowledge that you get is after you have that experience, and then you have managers, you have trainers that are listening to your calls and can give you kind of real-time feedback. That's where the knowledge can really be, start to be applied. Um, I think.
And this is it. And I think the key distinction is when you come up with a performance mindset, meaning that it's how well we do it. Because, like in
Mm,
the comedy world, there's probably 400 to 1,000 comedy writers for every stand up comedian.
hmm.
Because that stand up, that's the performance of it.
Yeah,
And they have to
yeah,
read the audience, get the timing right, get the facial expressions, and that's the performance. And this is what a lot of salespeople miss out on. They think I just do it. I'm told what to do. I read the script, or I even vary it. And if it doesn't work, then am I a bad salesperson, or was it just a bad call?
yeah. And I think on that performance piece too, I remember one of my early one of the really great things they did at Yelp was they really support, like they had a really great training program. They have the managers, they have people in charge of like the training program itself, and then they also have mentors who are just regular reps who've been around for a little bit longer. And I remember one of the earliest coaching advices I got in sales was to and what this person did that helped me was kind of to create a persona so that you are performing on the phones and don't take it as personally, if you don't perform like to your metrics, but you're performing as somewhat of a character. It's still you, But what she would do is she had a picture of Jackie Onassis on her desk, and she was like, "That's who I'm going to be when I'm on the phone." And that kind of separation of personal and professional, and your sales character and who you are in real life, I think helped her a lot, and it definitely helped me when I was getting started too.
And that comes up to the other part, that the performance is not your self-esteem or your identity, right?
Totally.
Because Chris Rock can bomb,
Hmm.
and he spends a year building his hour.
Yeah.
And he's been doing it for what, 30 years, 40 years? I mean,
Yeah.
that's how. Does he not know the jokes? Of course he does, right? He's got to
Yeah.
memorize. He's delivered them, what, 5 times a week for 50
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah.
And it's just that performance. So it's state of mind, all these little ingredients. And I think since we work for companies and we're hired as employees, that we're, oh, tell me what to do and I will do it. And if it doesn't work, it's not good,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
the
That. Yeah.
outcome,
Yeah,
the
no, exactly. Like if you don't get the outcome because you did this one thing, then you blame that one thing, when really it's way more nuanced, and maybe it's that one thing and another thing and another thing. And it's kind of building all of these different coaching, sales tips on top of each other, as opposed to uh, taking one thing, using it, oh, I didn't close that deal, let's throw that out. Then you're back to square one, as opposed to building on top of all these different skills and lessons that you can get.
and coaching and being coachable and being a coach is the big thing today. But I
Yeah,
think what people are trying to get at is focusing on the performance, that it's not you are bad or you are fantastic. It's that particular call or that performance could have been a little better.
can always be better.
Can always better. There's not a perfect person or perfect call. Well, there was one perfect call a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
but that was the only one known to man.
Yeah. And I think even for the best salespeople that I know, uh, are the harshest critics on themselves. Um, and they never, I mean, maybe there are some that are very cocky and think they're the best, say they're the best, and but for the most part, I think for the top performers that I know, they're hyper focused on what did I do wrong. Even if you win a deal, sometimes the opposite can happen. You win a deal and then you falsely attribute the reason that you won to something that wasn't the reason why you won, and then you don't get better you
And
know
what is it usually? If they win, it's because of the rep, and if they lose, it's because of pricing the product.
yeah, roadmap.
Yeah,
Yeah,
something
exactly.
outside of their control.
My SDR marketing.
And if you want to know, are you coachable or not, ask yourself, are you the opposite of coachable, which I call rationalization. And
I like
as
that.
salespeople, guess what? We're pretty good at convincing ourselves that we're pretty good. Right?
Totally.
We got the great customer in our head. And so if it goes poorly, we kind of rationalize it. I'm better than most. I'm good enough. It's the technology, it's the timing, the territory, my manager, whatever, anything except for me.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, there's relating it back to sports, which often happens in sales. There's definitely times where I've had coaches over the years who maybe I wasn't the most coachable, and I think part of that is rationalization, thinking, like on this sheet here, thinking that you're better than most. Sometimes you think you're better than the coaching, and when you
Yeah.
think you're better than the coaching, you're not going to get you're not going to get better.
Right.
Um, yeah,
And a lot of us get into that, what they call the Dunning-Kruger effect, where we get that one or two great years, and all of a sudden it has to be everything but us. because we were
Totally.
at President's Club, we were number one, whatever it was. So we now have evidence. We have that knowledge that we graduated and now we're the best.
Yeah.
But sales, it's a performance. It's like comedy, like cooking, like so many other things in life that knowledge is an ingredient, activity is an ingredient, but how well you do it in each instance is the distinction.
Yeah. And even when you have those, you know, successful quarters, successful years where you are putting up good numbers and you are building confidence and finding success in your performance, um, I think it's important for anybody in any, job or any role to still look for ways to get better. It never stops, or else someone else will pass you by.
Yeah.
Whether it's using a tool or whether it's trying a different method on a call or whatever the case may be. Being open to getting better, I think you can't let your success get in the way of that.
Yeah. And I've kind of come up with this system that I've really stolen from the great salespeople that I've interviewed on the show, in that they grade each significant event, sales call, meeting, day, week, quarter, month, and grade it whatever makes sense in their minds, either 1 to 10 or A, B, and C, like in school.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you all of a sudden bring to your conscious mind, how would it really go? What was the distinction that I could have made it better? Or what did I miss? What did I mess up?
Yeah. And I think kind of like what we've been talking about with, we're constantly graded on the outcomes. We're graded on the metrics. We're graded on when,
Activity. Yeah.
and sometimes it's not as objective as that.
It's
Sometimes it is
not.
more subjective. Like, I mean, if these are conversations that you're having with people, they're fluid, and who knows, like, corporate bro always says, like, maybe the prospect had a bad dream about your product and that's why they went with someone else. Sometimes you can't really measure uh your outcomes successfully, and you might have good outcomes and it was lucky, or you might have bad outcomes and you were unlucky. And so grading yourself on the end result, um, can hurt your coaching and
It does.
hurt your skills.
Yeah, because how many people come out of a unicorn thinking that they're the genius, right?
Yeah.
Because the bat boy on the Yankees is no better than the bat boy on the Pirates, right?
Yeah.
They just happen to be
Well,
at the
maybe not
right
the
place.
Pirates. I don't
Yeah,
know.
the Pirates.
They've had a tough couple of years,
Right, because
couple of decades.
every astronaut on the rocket gets to the moon,
Yeah.
whether they're the lead one or not. And you're right, because the outcome, is an indicator, but may not be a solely generated by the salesperson outcome or grade.
Yeah. And there's so many moments in a conversation, in a deal, on one call that you can look to and say, "Oh, I should have answered this differently. I should have listened to what they were saying more closely." Um, and so I think going back and trying to coach yourself too in
Well,
those
that
instances, and
well,
yeah,
that's it, because you know the greatest reps are the ones that go and proactively ask.
yeah,
Okay, yeah, I recorded this call, or I recorded, or let me tell you about this deal where it is. And pretty much every sales leader tells me that. It's like it's the
yeah,
ones that proactively want to talk about their deals.
yeah. And if they aren't, it's probably, I mean, maybe they're shy, but maybe they
Well,
just don't want to stay in the office a little longer. They want to get to the happy hour. They want to get out, and um, yeah,
well,
being proactive. It's just like an investment in your career. Why wouldn't you be?
well, that's it. They don't have that performance mindset. They have I checked all the boxes. I said all the things about every feature. I deframed the competitors. I gave them the right pricing. I asked for a next step. They do all the tactical things, but they're not looking at the performance of it.
Yeah.
Which, because when you dig into it, it's like, did the other person really connect with me? Did they look at me? Did they want to talk with me? Or was it a
Yeah.
transactional conversation?
And that goes back to the rationalization, mindset. And I think part of the rationalization mindset is almost like a denial mindset
It's a denial.
of,
It's a rationalization. You're
yeah,
selling
exactly.
yourself that it's not you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And you want to tell yourself like, well, I did everything you told me to do. Um, but sometimes you got to go above and beyond. And above and beyond sounds, like this crazy thing, but it's really not, at going to your manager and asking to go over a call with them, a call recording or a deal and that's been stuck in your pipeline. It's not that, once you do it, it's like, oh, I don't want to work out today. Once you're done with your workout, you feel great. And it was 30 minutes and that's it. And so I think part of the going above and beyond, it just sounds like this unattainable thing that only 1% of the 1% do, when really anyone can do it. It's not going to
Right. You can do it by
affect your week.
yourself. And a lot of
Yeah.
us do, right? There's
Yeah.
a product I use called Otter,
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
OTTER.ai.
familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I record all my calls. Nobody knows it. And then I can see the talk to listen ratio. And the important ones, I'll go and dissect. I go, at what point did I lose them?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's
And
fun.
it is fun. And it's also great for your notes, for your CRM. But
Yeah.
let's take an example of this. And probably the easiest example is like when you get into sales, what's the number one thing that everyone does wrong? They talk too much, right?
Yeah. They
They
don't
talk
shut up.
over people. They don't ask questions. They don't listen. As soon as the other person starts talking, they run them over.
Hmm.
So,
Pitching the product, pitching the product, pitching the product.
yeah. Oh, did I tell you about this? This last thing. And this is what I hear from reps all the time. They get on my one-on-ones and the blah, 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 blah. And I go, hold on, hold on, hold on. Let's bring it down to a question. Let's focus on something we can accomplish.
Yeah.
So if you took that, now how would you apply this to that? What I typically tell them is take all your statements, all your feature functions, turn it into a question. That forces the person to rephrase it. And a question requires the other person to think. It's really the only mind control we have. So if you're selling something that puts notes into Salesforce quickly, you might start off with it. On an average day, do you spend more than 20 minutes putting notes into the CRM? Oh, yeah. Now you got a conversation, right? As opposed
Yeah.
to telling them that it's different and it's faster.
Yeah.
So if you took all your statements, turn them into questions, and then develop this magic called shut up, the pause. That little uncomfortable, should I talk or should I wait until they talk?
Oh, I still remember the first time I was told that and had to do it on a call. And you can just, you feel yourself like sweating, like just wanting to speak so badly. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's a definite like mind skill. It's a skill. It's a
It's a
muscle that you
skill.
have to build in your brain to like stop yourself. I mean, even when I was a waiter, like first time I was a waiter for a day at my cousin's,
It's a long career.
and I was like, yeah, I went over to the table and like, so do you guys want like a Coca-Cola or something, and I just kept like adding words, even as so that was probably a clue that I had a lot of work to do when I got into sales, but just shutting up, just giving them the option to say something, and then you're able to learn what they say, learn something about them, and that's what you need at the end of the day.
Well, that's it, because I picked that because it's probably easy to do relatively,
Hmm.
and the impact is high.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's like if you want
totally.
to lose weight, look at the high calorie stuff that you're not crazy about,
Yeah,
right? So you don't
yeah,
start with beer. You switch from Coke to Diet Coke, right?
yeah. No, keep beer, keep
Keep
beer.
beer. Beer's good. You
But
might
yeah,
get
that is it's a tough skill, but like you said, it's not like you have to say anything. You don't
that
have to think
right.
of. It's just stop talking.
Yeah. So this is kind of where I start, because as salespeople, we're professional communicators. It's our That's why they hire us, and they don't just have a website. Because when they can't do something on a website, then a salesperson gets involved. And then you have to become a good communicator. And everybody knows that the listening and stuff, but listening is a more advanced skill. Not talking is it's a relatively easy skill.
Yeah,
And if you took your conversations and just like, okay, for 1 week, I'm going to count the number of times I did a little bit more of a pause than would normally have been there.
yeah, and that's something that like we were saying about going back and looking at your calls. The talk time, but also just looking at your statements. Looking at those time at your questions. Looking at your statements that you turn into questions, and do you add a follow up at the end of your question? Are you asking three questions at once? Are you just asking one and letting them speak? Um, and I think sometimes if you don't go back and look at your calls, and either your manager doesn't pick that up, like it's something that you kind of do have to go back and study the tape uh, to notice sometimes, if your manager doesn't point it out to you. So um,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you could just have a piece of paper and just mark down the number of times that you just paused. Right.
Hmm.
And then have a follow up question. Well, tell me more about that.
Yeah,
Is
then
that,
ask the follow up.
yeah, is that new, or is it something that's been around for a while?
Yeah, yeah.
And people, these are just good communication skills that anyone, clearly, most people listening already have developed this. And I'm just using it as an example of how you can take this performance mindset and start building it into your everyday sales process. Because as soon as you hang up the phone there, give yourself a little grade. How well did I do? You know, was it an
Be
A
honest.
call? Yeah. Or what I tell people is mark it down as a C until you think about it, which will force you to spend time on it.
Yeah, which will force you to think about it. Yeah.
And this is what I got into, like with a lot of the technology people. Talk to listen ratio is nice, but why not a call grader with a little bit of hint? It's like you kind of pounced here, right?
Hmm.
That pause was less than a nanosecond,
Yeah.
right?
Talk time doesn't tell you that.
Right. What you want
Um,
to do is kind of like dissect it, but this is what performance is.
yeah, it's the
And
details.
right. And now, if you can start listing out and dissecting what an A call is versus a B call versus a C call, and then say, well, how about if I followed up with yet another question? And why didn't they connect with that question? And then you could build off of that. And you start what I call stacking these. So you get better every day. Once you get those elements into your process, start adding little ones.
Yeah.
Because the great salespeople, like they have like advanced skills like empathy, right? Yeah, I mean, grade yourself on empathy. It's pretty high. I
Yeah.
don't know, I guess.
Very subjective.
Right. So you have to, okay, so what does empathy consist of? It consists of, you got to be curious to be empathetic, because you got to think about the other person. Okay. If I was them, am I curious? How would I become more curious about them? You got to ask questions. Then you got to
Yeah.
like check to see if you're on the same page.
Yeah. And part of that's research too. I mean, I know for a lot of salespeople, you're pulling up their website while the phone's ringing. Um,
Yeah.
but doing, uh, trying to find connections that, I think sometimes if you're on a call and you're struggling to find a connection about your product and what you're trying to sell them, take a step back and be interested in their life in general. And then that can lead to different questions and more, rapport that you're building.
Right.
Um, but all of that, and that's something that you can see in your calls too. Like maybe why wasn't I making this connection? Well, I was talking about this feature and what they're doing and how busy and da 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 da. Some prospects, like that because they don't have time and they want to get down to brass tacks right away. Um, and maybe that's not the right approach for every call, but for some people, they they're not listening to you because you're just a salesperson. So it's tough to, really, I think it really is important to just curiosity is a great second step after shutting up because uh, if you're genuinely curious, it can lead to a lot of great questions and a lot of great rapport building and deals moving forward where um, and can also lead to getting you out of a situation where you feel like you're just on a hamster wheel having the same conversation over and over.
Right.
And then you go back and you look at the call and then you see where could I have been curious in different areas or more curious in general.
Right. And if you build that into your system, if you take notes and say like, well, 'cause I interviewed this great VP of sales, and his opener when someone asked him, "How you doing today?" "Ah, can't be that bad. I got a croissant and a nice black coffee."
Sounds pretty nice.
Doesn't it? Because and guess what the other person says? "Oh, yeah, I just had fruit this morning for breakfast." Now you're talking about something you both have in common.
Yeah,
It's not about what the product does. It's not about your problem points. What's your pain points, right? You're talking like human beings.
exactly.
And, you know, something like that took him 15 years to figure out. Now, if you proactively develop a system of grading your calls every day, did I build rapport with that person? Or did I just dive right into our value prop and try and fight their objections? Isn't that fun?
Yeah. Did I just did
let's
I
let's
just
get into an argument.
Yeah, exactly. Did I just check off all the boxes that they tell me to do? Did I go through the script that I was supposed to do and I made the number of calls I was supposed to make and it's not working. Why is it not working? Maybe you didn't connect on a human to human level
Yeah.
and they aren't looking at you as a human or listening to you as a human.
And that's it because everybody wants the exact process. But what we got to do is like take a good process, mold it to our own personality, and then, like a comedian, every night kind of hone it a little bit,
Yeah, change it up a little.
change it up
I
a little.
mean, with the
Timing.
comedians too, it's like yeah, the timing is everything. Um, and sometimes what you think is really funny is not what the audience thinks is really funny. And so you can die on a certain hill for a joke, sure. Uh, but I think the interaction with the audience is similar to an interaction with a prospect, where like if you don't have respect for them or listen to them, then no one's gonna follow or listen to you. If you're not getting, engaging with them in the comments, if you're not uh, taking their reception seriously, and then thinking, and maybe it also works in your favor if you have a good call that people actually do like, or a video that or a joke or whatever that people do like, it's like, okay, why was this successful, and how can we repeat that? Um, and it's the same thing for sales,
It
100%.
is the same thing. But yet no comedian assumes that it's going to work everywhere. The fame,
Yeah,
like, I mean, Seinfeld is clearly in the top 10, right?
yeah.
But he bombs when he goes to colleges because he was doing that the French Prince joke where he's like playing with his iPhone and he's like, look, I'm just looking up
Oh yeah,
numbers. And that was politically offensive to the college kids.
yeah,
So he didn't change. He just said, I'm not going to play at colleges anymore. But
yeah. I know. I don't know if I don't know if a lot of comedians like performing at colleges
right, but
anymore, but totally, totally,
yeah,
yeah.
but
Being and like knowing, where your audience is, who your audience is, who you connect to, and then how you can change based on the audience. If we're doing a it's if we're doing a commercial for a brand, we might have to be a little bit cleaner. If we're doing a talk for a live audience, it's got to be a little punchier. Um, and kind of knowing your audience in comedy is it's harder sometimes in sales because you have to make judgments on who you're speaking to ahead of time, and it's
yes,
just kind of human nature. But I think then being open to, as you're talking to them, you can kind of pick up what type of person is this, what are they interested in, and then you can kind of mold yourself based on the audience.
yeah. And I don't know if you've ever traveled with a sales manager. I had a New York City sales manager once, and we were down in North Carolina, and he drove the call.
Yeah.
And I could just, the culture was so different
Hmm.
between New York, Manhattan, and like Raleigh, Durham.
Yeah.
As soon as my manager stopped talking, the client goes, "Did you used to sell vacuum cleaners?" Because he just went like 100 miles an hour
Yeah,
for like 15 minutes.
they're
And the other,
slower in South Korea. You got to talk slower down there.
right. You got to build rapport. You got to start with AR
Yeah.
and build up. And I don't even think he got what he meant by the vacuum cleaner sales guy.
Probably not.
No,
He probably wasn't
he
very
didn't care.
coachable.
I don't think he cared
Yeah,
either.
exactly. He's like, "Fine, I'm going back to New York. I'm gonna sell in Brooklyn."
So, my advice with reps is don't try and take on being an A conversationalist or an A rep all at once as one big chunk. Break it down into the simple things that give you huge impact. And the easiest ones are not talking, turn your statements into questions, start and talk about them and ask about them, because that will build up your empathy. And once you become empathetic, then you know what they're feeling. You know what they're up against. You know how to help them. And you'll get a sense of when they're being completely forthcoming versus being guarded.
Totally.
Um, why don't we open it up for questions now? If I can see it, put a comment underneath the presentation if you have a particular question before we. There's one about storytelling. Yeah, storytelling's good if the other person's interested. Um, but I've always learned the more the other person talks, the better off you are. In almost
They tell
every,
you a story.
they tell you a story,
They tell
and
you
then
a
you
story.
you
Then
dig
you're,
into the pieces that are relevant.
yeah. Then you really shut up. Let
You
them
really,
let them talk.
yeah, and they'll tell you pretty much why they would or would not buy.
Yeah, I like the comment about relating their story back to you also. Then you can tell a story, then you have permission. If they told a story, then you have permission to tell a story, but keep it short. But
Keep it short
um
about them. But
you know
the, the the other point that I got out of a great interview was be interested will make you interesting.
Yes.
So if you're
That's a great
interested,
quote.
yeah,
That's a
how
great
they're
quote.
doing it today. How are you
Yeah.
updating Salesforce today?
Yeah.
Is it easy? Do you like it? What would you change? Are
Yeah. Do
you
you need Scratchpad?
are
Yeah.
you open to a faster, easier way of
Yeah.
doing it? Are you curious
Exactly.
how other people do it? And that long pause is really powerful because the other person's feeling the same tension you are. And hope,
Totally.
yeah, because I've learned this when interviewing hundreds of reps is as soon as I get on the camera with them, I ask myself, is this a talker or a listener?
Interesting.
Because I know if they're a talker, all I have to, okay, so what's a good question that's going to get this person rolling?
Yeah.
It's the ones that aren't talkers, you got to really pull it out of them. Tell me more about it. You got to layer your questions.
Yeah. And I think being you know, sometimes I think I was guilty of this as a salesperson, but not feeling like you're annoying them with questions. It's being curious. Um, and if they get annoyed, you're doing, I mean, that's okay. Like if you're asking a lot of questions, as long as it's relevant to the flow of the conversation and you're trying to find out about them, um, if they stop you, you can tell them, I'm just trying to learn. I'm just interested. I'm just trying to learn about you. I'm just interested. And I think some of those same, reps who are very tough on themselves and their performance are also the best at asking questions and not being afraid to ask the important questions, when other people might feel like, oh, I don't want to push them too hard, or I don't want to ask this right now, when at the end of the call, you're going to need that information regardless, one way or another, to
Yeah,
close this deal. And so asking the questions, sometimes it's curiosity and it's not being afraid to
yeah.
ask it.
Now, sales leaders always say coachability is like almost number one or two when they're hiring.
Hmm.
What's crazy is reps, about 85% felt that they were highly coachable when I did a poll. When I ask managers, it's just the inverse. It's like
That's funny.
15%.
That's a great that's a great poll.
But you start reading the comments, and that's where I learn. It's like, well, it depends on the person coaching me. And the crazy
Yeah.
distinction I found with this great interview I did with a sales leader, it's like the ones who want it and take it are the ones that feel I have their back. That it's not criticism. It's not even like feedback. It's kind of like that they know that that person cares about them beyond the transaction.
Yeah.
And that is something I probably had once in my whole career as a sales rep. So it's not
Yeah.
that often. And I had, good 12 sales managers in my life.
I feel like I've been really lucky with my sales managers. I've I've felt that with most of them. Uh, and I know that's rare. But I do feel like, uh, a lot of it's so easy for a rep to not feel that, and not
Absolutely.
have a connection to their manager,
Well, how
and
could,
feel like,
yeah,
yeah, and I think quota, just having quota in sales, it's no other department that's like that really, where their performance is tied to your performance, their money is your money, so there's a lot of pressure in that relationship. But I think and when you do have it, it's amazing. And I'm still in touch with some of my old sales managers, who I do think genuinely cared about whether I was successful at that company or another company or at a different role, or whatever the case may be. And I think that's huge for reps to be able to take coaching, is for a manager to have that mindset. But also for the reps who don't feel like that, to give their managers more of a chance to get there, you know, treat them
Yeah,
like a prospect.
and also have their back,
Yeah, yeah.
right? You
You're
know,
on the same team regardless. You're not gonna.
whether you like it or not.
Yeah, exactly.
And a lot of people feel like it's a stalemate where the rep won't change and the manager doesn't like it. And so, but guess who wins? You know, the manager can fire you, but you can't, you can quit and you can have a
Yeah,
mutiny. Those are your choices.
yeah. Mutiny would be.
It's happened, right?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure it's happened. But that sounds like too much work. You know, it's a lot easier if you just kind of get on the same page and
Well, that's
maybe
it.
you get. Yeah,
And think about getting better without a coach. You know, you
a lot
can,
harder.
it's a lot harder. You can record your calls, you can do your videos and do that. You can get comments on LinkedIn on your videos. I'm sure you've seen some of them.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Oh my God, yeah.
Some of them constructive, some not so much.
Most not very, but yeah. Um, and I think for a lot of reps too, like um, really giving your relationship with with your manager a shot. And if you don't have that connection for whatever reason, go to someone else in the company, go to another sales rep, go to another, someone else in the sales team, or maybe outside who, is a mentor to you. Don't let your lack of connection with your manager stop you from seeking out more coaching,
Yeah,
because like you said, it's a lot harder when you're on your own. You need another perspective.
yeah. And there's
You
this
just
thing
need it.
called the Solomon's paradox, where it's always easier for somebody else to see the solution to your problem than it is for you.
Yeah, Solomon was right.
Because they're not emotionally attached. They haven't done the rationalization yet.
Exactly. Exactly. Maybe they'll get there,
Well, hopefully, but typically it goes
Yeah.
the other direction.
No, exactly.
The
Exactly.
rationalization
Hopefully they
gets,
don't get there.
yeah. Cool. Okay, I didn't see any additional comments. What I'll do is I'll put the recording up on, okay, hold on. Here's a newbie. Okay. If you're new in sales, everything is good. Okay. The problem is don't rely and make it the only thing. I would, read books, listen to podcasts, watch videos, and write down what you got out of it and try and implement one thing at a time, like being quiet, putting statements into questions until you get comfortable, until it becomes a habit. Watch how other people do. Try and get an image of what good looks like. And even ask your manager, what's a good call look like, regardless of outcome? You know, what does it look like? There's the rapport building, there's the questions, a little discovery, then you get to maybe some problem, and then there's kind of a close to a next step. Write that out, and then come up with a way of going through that written so that you can look at it in a mind map like I did here, or an outline or a PowerPoint. Make it simple, but then after each call, ask yourself, how'd I do? What was the easiest thing I could have changed that what do you think would have had the most impact? Don't go from, I just got into sales. How do I present in front of the board of directors? Right? You're not there. Just kind of get used to it and then repeat it. But be conscious because the grading of each call each day turns it into something that's conscious instead of the knowledge. Because everyone asks, what book should I read? Okay, well, you read the book, but then do you apply it? It's nice, it's good, right?
Can't
But
hurt.
it can't
But
hurt. But write something down and say, oh, I'm going to take this skill and try and apply it over the next 30 days. Because after 30 days, it'll be a habit and you won't have to write it down. It'll be second nature. But winging it in sales, that osmosis That takes about 5 or 10 years to become good at sales.
Yeah.
As I had this manager, his answer was always, let's go and see how it goes. And it's like, no, no, no. It took me 2 weeks to get this meeting. Right?
Yeah.
If it doesn't go well, it's pretty serious. Let's sit
Yeah.
down and scope out who's going to do what. Because he always liked to talk about baseball, which took up a good 20 minutes of the hour. It was okay. The report, can we squeeze that down to 10? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe this person doesn't like baseball, Bob.
Yeah. Right. You talk about the weekend, but I would chunk it down and focus on what you're doing right.
Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up. And because you got to get into that right state of mind because you're dealing with another person. And people sense that. They sense when you're nervous, they sense when you're anxious, they sense when you're just going through the motions.
Yeah. A- Absolutely. It's a tone of voice too. When you're thinking that way, whether you realize it or not, unless you're really, really good at sales, they hear your emotions on the phone. If
Yes.
you're scared to talk to them, they can hear, prospects,
Of
they
course
smell
they
fear.
can.
Uh,
Right. And the next question below that was, how do you get away from the reputation of being a rep? And my favorite word there, the pitch. Well, you got to understand the other person views a pitch as a commercial. And I don't know what you do when you see a commercial on TV, but it's not the time to like sit there. Wow, I wonder how I'm going to buy that car. I wonder if that soda is really as delicious as it looks. No, they turn off and they go in the kitchen and do something else. Sales is about building a connection. Find out what you can ask about them, get them talking. And I always say, what do you have in common? Both have careers, right? Everyone's got a
Both
career.
eat breakfast in the morning.
Yeah. Why does that
You
work
know?
so well? He eats the same damn
Yeah.
croissant every day. How good can it be? Right?
Then you're opening every single time you call them, following up. How's the croissant today?
Right.
You know?
They can hear the sound and the slurping of the coffee. You can get
And
into
they
you
remember,
Starbucks or
yeah.
Dunkin' Donuts.
And I think having those, I mean, Dunkin' Donuts, of course, go
And
Sox, but
Bostonian. Yeah.
but the rapport build and those little like rapport building moments where you have that breakfast question. If you ask that on the next call, it immediately triggers a memory in their head. Oh, I've talked to this person before. We have a relationship. I have some maybe a little respect for the salesperson. I'll give you more of a chance on this call.
Well, people talk to people they either want to talk to or have to.
Yeah.
There's not much in the middle.
Yeah, salespeople are kind of dropped into an
That-
into the unfair bucket there, but yeah,
Right, because people are either they have to because they looked at the caller ID and they have to answer the phone because their manager wants them to answer the phone,
yeah,
and you happen to be the salesperson and they're trying to get rid of you.
yeah,
Or they enjoy talking to you.
yeah.
And especially for those people who are home and alone, right? They probably haven't talked to
I
a
mean, yeah,
friendly person in a
there's a
while.
few prospects. Maybe there's a couple calls out there where you're like, okay, I let them talk too much, like they don't, this got way out of hand. Let's bring it back to the product for a second.
Yeah,
Sometimes that happens too, and like there is rapport build. I mean, I've had
too
deals
much
where
rapport. Yeah.
you're like, yeah, there's too much rapport building. You've made such a connection with this, woman in Texas who has a family business, and you've been talking to them for months, and then it kind of comes back to the honesty piece of like looking at your call and seeing all the great things, seeing the rapport is there. I know all of her family's names. I know her son's playing high school football, whatever. And you're ignoring the bad side of, are they really a good fit? Am I
Yeah.
wasting my time? Am I calling them because I want to call them? Because I know it'll be harder to talk to another prospect who might be better fit, but you don't have the rapport with. And there's definite that's a fine balance too with And you kind of know, when they're going on a little long, and you should probably get back to some
Business. Yeah.
business. Yeah,
Yeah.
but sometimes that happens in sales, and I think salespeople can fall down that trap pretty easily when most of the people don't want to be talking to us. So
Yeah. Cool. Hey, give us a little update on Scratchpad. It looks like you had a new
yeah,
new capability today.
we did. We dropped a new uh, feature it's our inbox and deal alert system. And if you don't know Scratchpad, it's basically a way to make Salesforce easier for you. So you can access it from anywhere on the web. You just press Command J, Control J when you're on a call. You can enter notes and it updates Salesforce immediately. And with this new feature that's rolling out, it's a way to kind of take all of the notifications that you're getting on Slack and email and Salesforce comments. You're hopping out of this, you're hopping out of that. And at the end of the day, you have 2 hours of work debt to make sure you didn't miss anything in the haystack. Or throughout the day, if you're on top of everything, you're behind on your other work. And so with this, the whole point and the whole goal is to have these sales alerts, these sales notifications in the same workflow that you're using every day. And that way it's not a distraction from what you're currently working on. You don't have to hop out of your current Salesforce page or whatever and then hop back in, and then you've lost 30 minutes. This way you can access those as you're going through your workflow, and it's just way more efficient for you. Unfortunately, I see Jamie Couch's comment there. We don't integrate with HubSpot right now. It's just for sales people who are using Salesforce, companies using Salesforce. But for those companies using Salesforce, I mean, when I was a rep, I was not like a tech, crazy person trying to max. I did have friends like that. And so coming to Scratchpad, since I've been here, it's been like weird and amazing at how much I've seen salespeople like freak out over this tool. Uh, Genuinely, I know I'm biased because I work there, but it has been really interesting to witness that. So if you are in sales and you do have Scratchpad, yeah, it's definitely worth checking out.
Cool. Great. I appreciate everybody showing up today. And I'll put this, it'll remain on this page, but if you want to share it with somebody else, it'll also be on the Brutal Truth YouTube channel for your use as well. Thanks,
Another
everybody.
good place to get coaching tips.
Yeah.